Welcome to another edition of the Greek Podcast, special coronavirus 2020 outbreak pandemic edition. Ellen Wald, how are you doing today, ma'am?
Well, I do not have coronavirus. I am not coughing. I am not sneezing. So I think all is well.
I am coughing, a little sore throat. But Nathan last week was in here like harking a lung up, and he hasn't been to China, but he has been around someone who has been to China. Could I have given Nathan corona and he gave it back to me? Like in the ultimate, yeah, that would be pretty. That'd be pretty sick if he did
I have to say that given the locations where we all live, we are much more likely to be suffering from seasonal allergies.
Don't
And
use logic like that now, Ellen.
I
Come on,
know.
come
Well,
on now.
I was at the gym this morning and, I don't have bad allergies, but like it gets really bad. Like when you walk to your car and it's covered in a sheen of yellow pollen, like it's hard not to, have a reaction. And so I'm at the gym and I'm like kind of cough and my throat's a little scratchy and I'm thinking like, "Oh my god, what if everybody else around me thinks I have coronavirus?" I know it's just a little bit of allergies because I like, touched my car in the process, but like everyone's going to think I have coronavirus, so I'm like going over to the hand sanitizer and like sanitizing my hands and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So let's talk Corona just for a second. 'Cause I've gotten several people who I know who listen to the podcast have kind of asked me my opinion on it, and I'm sure folks would hear your opinion on it. This is not the medical Dr. Ellen Wall, so keep that in mind. And I am nowhere near a doctor. I don't even well, I do have Dr. in my name, but it's my middle name. So yeah, so I'm not a doctor either. But Ellen, let's talk about that briefly. Just kind of there's the impact of the global economy we have to deal with, but as far as the spread of the virus and you are the resident historian here and scholar, it seems to me from the redneck perspective is that yes, the virus is spreading or has spread or will spread. Yes, people get sick. Yes, people die or have died, dying, will die. With all that being said, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Not on the impact on the economy, because you can't deny the demand that's going away, but the projection of what to be scared of, unless you're really old, or maybe you're a cancer patient and you have a weak immune system because you got chemo or radiation, or you're an infant. You might get sick, but you're probably not the end of the world. And they canceled Sarah Week, and it's like, okay, I get it, but it's like, guys, y'all were perpetuating this thing. And the final thing I say is the CDC comes out and they're, listen, the CDC, no one cares about the CDC until there's an outbreak. So this is like their one chance every 10 years to get out there and be like, you need to listen to us. And it's like, go home, guys. So I'm not trying to diminish the people who are sick and have died. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the hysteria seems to be a little bit overhyped. A lot of it overhyped.
So I think the economic hysteria is one thing, and then there's the like personal hysteria. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of hysteria. I mean, coronavirus is okay, let's put it this way. It's not as bad as SARS or MERS
Hmm.
or measles, which by the way, there were serious
Mm-hmm.
outbreaks of measles in areas of the United States. And I mean, measles is a really, really serious
Yeah.
disease. So, this is like I think the reason that people are freaking out about this, and it's interesting because I have a friend who works for the CDC, and we were chatting about the Celtics because he's a Celtics fan,
Smart
and
guy.
um, you know, with the CDC and dealing with this, somewhere that's not Atlanta. I'm not gonna say where, but he said
Mm-hmm.
he's like, it's and I was asking him because I have some travel coming up, and I was like, should I be concerned? And he's like, well, look, we still don't really know exactly what's gonna happen. He's like, it's very contagious, like in terms
Sure.
of how you can get it, but you don't need to be worried about canceling travel at this point. I mean, like obviously I'm not traveling to Iran or China or northern Italy or any of those areas, but just travel in general. And I think that that's a really good point, is that like people will get sick, but people get sick from a lot of things, and it doesn't seem like it's not like fatal unless you don't have good healthcare. So I think the idea that like it's gonna like wash over the United States and the United States is gonna shut down is entirely overreacting and crazy.
Well, and let's talk
And
about
I
that.
think people need to realize that when they're looking at it financially, like in terms of what the markets experienced last week.
Mhm,
I gotta say, like I wanted, like, why weren't markets reacting like this the week before? That's
right.
my biggest question. It's not why did they drop last week. It's why weren't they dropping the week before? And I really think, and I think that the president said this. He said,
Mm.
some of this is basically said, he's like, look, is due to Bernie Sanders doing well, and markets are scared of Bernie Sanders, and you had this like confluence of stuff. So, and I'm not. I do think that a lot of people believe that the markets were overvalued and were due for a correction,
Mhm.
and this maybe kind of triggered stuff. Um, so that doesn't mean you shouldn't be careful and wash your hands and not cough all over other people. And if you're sick, you shouldn't go out. But those are all common sense things that people should do all the time.
Yeah, so a couple things there. One, let's talk about the health thing. My understanding is, because I've gotten this question a few times about the mask. The masks are to help prevent the spreading, not to prevent you from getting the disease.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. If you're going to go buy a mask, which we sent, with the Bush China Foundation, two and a half million masks to China. That's to help prevent the spread, not to keep you from getting it.
Yeah.
How that works, I don't know. That's just what they say.
So
But
here's how it works. Okay.
okay.
So I asked about it. So you wear a mask to prevent you from infecting other people. So that's why surgeons will wear masks in the operating room, because
Mhm,
they don't want to contaminate the
mhm,
surgical field with any of their germs.
mhm.
So it helps you not like cough on somebody else if you're sick. So
Right.
if you're sick, wear a mask. If you're not sick, unless you're wearing a special respirator mask called like
Mhm,
an N95 or something, it's not gonna help you at all, other than
mhm,
like make you look funny or feel good. Like maybe
mhm.
you'll feel better. It might improve your like psychological feeling, but know that it's not actually doing anything to prevent, like, if someone's going to cough on you, the mask is not going to prevent you from getting it. There is one thing it can
I'm
help
looking
with
at you, Nate. Put your
is
mask on, dude.
people tend to put their fingers in their mouths. So
Yeah.
if you're wearing a mask, then that kind of like prevents that. So it might help with that,
My wife
which is
bites her nails, and so does my son. I might get them masks to be like a nail biting prevention deal.
that could actually be a very effective, yeah, and thumb sucking.
So, well, I don't have any
Yeah.
I have a passy sucker, the youngest. But the next thing is, we saw about China, where this originated from. If it wasn't China, and this was Angola or Namibia, where they wouldn't, and I don't know, I'm just picking the random African nations here, but they wouldn't lock down the country. How much does that weigh into the fear? Because when you hear of a nation locking down its people and like, hey, you guys can't leave your house, it does create a little bit of fear. Like, oh my God, they're all going to die. Like the zombie apocalypse has finally arisen because you can't leave your house.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you listen to some of the reports out of China, they're talking about doing school. I think you mentioned this, and I heard it somewhere else. School. They're trying to figure out how to do school for the rest of the year, and they're so far behind. And well, and I'm not saying they should let people out or not. That's not the point. I'm just saying that the fact that they locked everyone down probably didn't help when it got outside the borders, because it's like, okay, we locked everyone down, and yeah, it's still here. And then we locked everyone on a cruise ship, and yeah, it's still spread. So it feels like when you lock people down and it spreads, it kind of gets everyone a little bit more up in arms, even though the death rate hadn't changed at all on it.
Yeah, I wonder if in part the lockdown is also because China is really essentially, police state in some respects, and that's it's not just to clamp down on the spread of the disease, but also to clamp down on the spread of information to show people that, hey, we're the government and you do what we say.
Yeah.
There are also
But
another
I'm saying,
reason.
maybe that's just. No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm saying, without a lockdown, would people be as scared? Because
oh,
when you lock people down, it's like, oh my gosh, we're locking folks down. The Chinese government, I think, their view on it and locking people down is like, we have the right to do it, so therefore we do it. But from the outsider's perspective, going, oh my gosh, they're locking people in their houses. I wonder if that adds to the potential fear of the
yeah.
virus spreading, because you're like, if they're keeping them indoors, then what happens if I get it? Whereas if it broke out
Oh,
in the
that's
United States,
yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
That's a good point. And I think if we can kind of think back to, remember the H1N1 flu? Like
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
was no talk of like locking people down. I remember I
Right.
was a grad student at BU and they were like, here is a special dorm. If you have H1N1,
Right.
you have to like stay, you have to like move to this dorm while you recuperate. So it wasn't like they were locking people down and they were like, everyone, here are free flu shots, go get a flu shot, and
Right.
here's some Purell to use. It wasn't like, and so there wasn't a sense of like panicking. There's more of a sense of like don't touch those nasty undergrads
Yeah,
because they're going
those
to give
nasty
you the flu.
undergrads. Get away from me,
Sorry.
you freshman, sophomore.
Don't
Go on.
I know. But I do think that that China certainly helped promote the like scariness of it, I
Right.
think.
Right.
But you know, and I do think that markets like drama.
Oh, they love drama. Let me tell you something.
And this
The
is like the
markets
most
are the big,
dramatic
yeah.
thing.
The markets are the Bachelor and the Bachelorette on steroids. Okay, they are looking for every little clip of drama they can find. Final thing is, I heard a report on the BBC Africa podcast. It's a good podcast if you're curious about what's going on in Africa. And they're like, and this is the Ryan super high, using hyperbole and all that mess to say, but they're basically like, coronavirus, we had Ebola, okay? Come on, you know. What are you talking about? I mean, come on.
You're like, coronavirus? We raised you our Ebola.
But the point is you look at the death rate, all people that died of Ebola and all that stuff, it's like, okay, it was a far bigger problem as far as the death rate goes than the coronavirus. And so they weren't, I don't say they're not concerned, but their concern level wasn't nearly what some other parts of the world are because they had to deal with, something like Ebola, which was comparatively speaking, a lot worse. So, okay, that's our thoughts. Anything else on coronavirus? We'll touch on it some more without the show. That's not, and just to be clear, that's not talking about the economic impact, because that's actually happening, but just the perception of it is kind of there. But anything else on before we move on to OPEC?
I was just gonna say, wouldn't it be awesome if like the transmission of other, regular diseases goes down because people are so hyper aware about coronavirus that they just like actually start washing their hands all the time? And we just end up being like, oh well, fewer people got chicken pox and the flu and the common cold and I don't know, some GI disease, whatever stomach flu is going around. Like, oh, all these things went down because people were so scared about getting coronavirus, which they didn't get, that they use good hygiene.
Don't tell Big Orin that on Twitter, because he will lecture you. And if you're listening, Big Orin, it's nothing but love. He will lecture you on how 12 to 60,000 people die annually from the flu. Like every time he talks about it, like he's always beating people up over like, well, if this was in America, y'all would. So he cracks you up with his coronavirus coverage.
I mean, people do die of the flu.
Oh yeah.
Because and it's a serious thing, and I've known people who got very, very sick and did die because of the flu. Usually they get sick and then they get pneumonia and then they die of pneumonia.
Right.
So
and that's why it's between 12 and 60,000, because it's hard to, you start like, well, okay, so it's not clear cut deal.
Yeah. Plus, if you're a vulnerable person, then you should take precautions. If you're a normal, healthy person with an immune system, make sure you've got Gatorade and Tylenol and lots of fluids and stay warm and, it'll suck, but you'll...
And don't go to Wuhan. Right. Don't go to Wuhan. I mean, that's...
don't go to Wuhan. Don't go to Iran, because Iran took the opposite approach of the Chinese, which is like, maybe... Can we talk about one interesting thing? Okay, so they said that they think that the coronavirus got to Iran from Wuhan because of 700 Chinese students who were studying in Qom, which is where the big Shia religious theological institutions are. Like, what were these, who knew that China was sending 700 people or that 700 Chinese Shia Muslims were hanging out in Qom learning to be imams? I mean, that in and of itself seemed much more interesting to me than obviously it was going to get to Iran from China, because there's a lot of China is one of the few places that still has a lot of economic ties with Iran, but I thought they locked up all the Uyghurs.
I was wondering about that. I wondered if they're there because the Muslim. When I was over there, that's one of the stories that the New York Times broke, was they were putting in the Muslims in those camps over there. If you go back whenever I went November 10th or whatever it was, there's a New York Times article about what the Chinese were doing to the Muslims over there. So I wonder if they're there maybe as a religious. They could practice religious more freely or something like that.
Maybe, but they were guys who were studying in the. So I don't know. I'm curious about that. I feel like that fact has kind of gotten lost, and to me that was kind of interesting. Not that really impacts oil or anything else, but
both of those governments are good about reporting facts, so I'm sure we'll get the full story at some point.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, let's talk about oil and gas now. Let's get into it here. We're going to lead off with Reuters. Reuters oil rebound rebounds over 4% as hopes of OPEC cut stimulus counter virus gloom. This is from Singapore. Oil price jumped more than 4% from multi-year lows hit earlier Monday, as hopes of deeper cuts in output by OPEC and stimulus from central banks countered worries about damage to demand from coronavirus outbreak. And this is what I was talking about earlier. There is actually some demand, economic impact here. It's not. This is where the hysteria it's feeding into it. But there was like 70 airlines who've either canceled or rescheduled or changed their schedule flying in and out of China. That does actually have some kind of economic impact. Now, obviously, that's not large enough to move the oil prices by themselves, but you start seeing that compounding itself, then you can see where there could be some fear of economic slowdown.
I love looking at this headline. Oil up as hopes of OPEC cut stimulus counter virus gloom. And then you look at it with another headline that I also included. So I'm going to read this for the readers. Oil looks into abyss as coronavirus threatens demand contraction.
Hold, please. The definition of abyss: a deep or seemingly bottomless chasm. I can't speak today.
A deep, wow. Oil is looking over a seemingly bottomless chasm. I mean, you can't go less than zero. So there is actually a bottom there.
There are negative interest rates, so maybe there's negative oil prices. I don't know.
Negative oil prices. Well, please, we will pay you to take this oil.
You do hear some of the producers in Texas complain about negative natural gas prices at point because they don't, they can't get a market for it. So.
I stand corrected.
It's not often, but you do hear about it. So I've never seen the receipts for that, but I have heard of it.
Could you imagine trying to figure out the taxes?
Oh yeah, is that a write-off? So into the abyss as we're going here. Well, so I guess Ellen, we were talking offline, and I'll just kind of throw this out here, just to kind of, let's add to the hype and hysteria. Why don't we? Give me the odds that the bromance is rekindled by OPEC coming out this weekend and saying, you know what, screw you guys, we're increasing production. Like, you know what, U.S., we've had enough of you guys, EOG, Exxon, we're tired of you pushing us around. We're ramping up by 1 million barrels a day, and your guys are going to have business. And like Novak, and then they come out, they hold hands, and they find it's a big deal, big conspiracy.
So if I was a cartoonist, and I wanted to draw a cartoon to go along with that, it would actually be Novak stepping on the Saudi oil minister and like grinding his boot. That would be my depiction of the fate of the bromance if that happens. I mean, look, I think people are everyone's super excited about this OPEC meeting, which apparently is still on.
Despite coronavirus.
I think that the issue here is that they've talked a lot about cuts, so people may be very excited about it, or they may assume that a big cut is coming. And I don't think that Russia and Saudi Arabia are on the same page. And apparently they're going to have some sort of technical meeting tomorrow to discuss it and maybe get on the same page. But I'm not really sure that Russia is not in a position where it has to agree to anything, period. I mean, so let's break it down. Okay, so back in December, they agreed to, I think it was 1.2 or 1.7 million barrels per day of cuts that are supposed to last through the end of March. Then they were going to meet this time in March to decide if they wanted to continue those cuts. So this is supposed to be a meeting to decide about continuing 1.7 million barrels of cuts. Then earlier in February, we had the JTC recommend 600,000 barrels per day of cuts. Now we're hearing that the Saudis really want 1 million barrels a day of cuts. So basically they're going to have this meeting and they can decide to either roll over the current cuts, add 600,000 barrels per day to that, add 1 million barrels per day to that. But then there's also this thing about how China cut its orders of Saudi oil by about it was a little over 29%. So is that counted in this, or is that in addition? That's really unclear, and I feel there's going to be some.
Yeah, where did that money go to?
Well, they're cutting their orders.
Cutting, period. Okay.
They're cutting their orders for Saudi oil, which means that Saudi Arabia can decide, either Saudi Arabia might not produce that oil, although I assume if it was going to be, I mean, if it was for March delivery, then I don't know whether it's March delivery or orders made in March. I'm not entirely clear on exactly exactly which oil
But
this is.
China's not cutting Saudi and buying from somewhere else, I guess.
No, it's cut.
Okay.
It
It's a
doesn't
strict
want.
cut. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and at least for 1 month. And so the question is, does Saudi produce that oil and stick it in storage? Does it just not produce that oil, or does it produce that oil and try to find another buyer? And how does that play into this? And then the other question is, it looks almost like China is cutting about 30% of its oil across board because they cut about 30% of their orders from West Africa. So here's the other question, and I think this is a really big point when it comes to Russia. Most Russian oil gets to China via a pipeline. And I read today that so far in February, those pipeline rates were undisturbed. So it was flowing as normal. The question is China going to cut off or going to ask Russia to send 30% less oil? Or is Russia going to continue to send the full amount because it's got this pipeline and, it's not so easy to I mean, I don't know how easy it is or is not to cut the flow of oil through a pipeline. It's not like they're going to have somebody else come and fill it in that amount if they're not going to send it. I know there's certain issues in Alaska with not having a flow through the pipeline. It can cause it to freeze and in the winter and stuff. I don't know if that's at play in this particular Russia-China pipeline, but it could mean that Russia ends up getting to send its full amount to China and everybody else who's exporting to China doesn't. And that would really put Russia up on top of this if this is a zero-sum game.
And do we know is the pipeline at 100% capacity?
We don't know them. I don't know. We'd have to ask.
Because that would be the real gangster move if Russia had the spare capacity and then they just bought it from Russia, and so Russia's pipeline went full, and they're like, hey, we're gonna buy it from you guys. Then they would double. It'd be double power over the Saudis.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I don't know.
So what do you think is going to happen? What's your official, unofficial, don't hold me to it prediction?
I think that I think that Russia is positioning itself not to cut. I think that what we're going to end up with is some sort of OPEC cut that vastly favors Russia in terms of and in which Saudi Arabia ends up bearing the brunt, whether it's 600 barrels per day or 600,000 barrels per day or 1,000,000 barrels per day. Saudi Arabia is going to bear the brunt of this, and Russia is basically going to not have to cut at all. And which personally, in my opinion, means that they really need to question the whole legitimacy of having Russia in this, because Russia is basically playing them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If they don't work with the Saudis, what's the point of having them them in there with them? Because it's if we're going to have to take all the lumps here, will we see over under 75% chance we're going to see Novak with a 300-page printout of spreadsheets from all the analysis that they had to do?
It's up here.
It's up here.
Or that guy, he has that guy with the brown beard, the interpreter. I think his interpreter has to carries all that.
But do you expect that if the Russians don't cut, let's just say, how much information can we reasonably expect to hear from them on why, other than the generic, well, we don't think it's good, but how much will they provide, if anything, about why they won't want to cut?
I think that they'll get some sort of, well, Putin already prefaced that by saying Putin basically came out. We have this, an article about this later on. He says that he basically went and said, I'm going to just flip to it right now. He says that Russia can handle the oil slide. He's basically saying our budget is, he says, I want to stress that for the Russian budget, for our economy, the current oil prices level is acceptable. Now, that doesn't mean that it actually is, okay? He could be freaking out in private, but in public, that's his negotiating stance is, we're cool with this price. And so we don't need to cut. We're not in a place where we see, remember the Saudi oil minister said something like this is a fire that we have to put out. I mean, that says emergency. And Putin is like, no. He's like, it would be nice to have more money. He's like, thanks to he's like, basically thanks to the OPEC plus stuff so far, we've obtained extra budget revenues.
Mm.
That's
Hmm.
Putin. Whether or not that's true, like the truth of the matter isn't like that important here. It's more that
No.
this is Putin's posture publicly. So he's basically saying to Novak, like, this is where we're starting. We don't need this. So, like, get the best deal that you can for us, which is everybody else cuts and we go on our merry way. Like, you could either agree to some like minor cut that we're never going to do, or just be like, I don't care. You do what you have. Like you're freaking out. We're not freaking out. And that's the best position he can be in because it's clear. I mean, the other, Saudi Arabia has made it look like this is an emergency. And Russia's
But
like, no, not emergency.
so here's where I don't fully understand. You have all this brain trust sitting around. Shouldn't the Saudis have a pretty good idea of the whooping or how good a position, whatever it is that Russia's in? Shouldn't they be able to diagnose the problem and go, okay, Putin's full of it, or no, he's actually telling the truth here? And so I agree that Putin's definitely putting it out there. He's backing his guy. Hey, we're going in here. You're not going to budge. But you would think the Saudis would have access, and OPEC in general would have access to a lot more economic data than me and you would have, and can kind of have a feel for how much bluffing's going on there.
It's a really good question. I think that Al Fali had a different approach, and his was a very strong approach. His kind of was like, we're in this together. And I think he really put a lot of pressure on Novak to show this like united front of like the two of them
Mm-hmm.
and then everyone else. And I just don't think that the new Saudi oil minister is. I mean, look, I don't know what it's like in private. I
Yeah,
can't say,
sure.
but the public persona is that he's letting Novak walk all over him because he's desperate to get prices up. And I mean, like the last time Saudi agreed to cut so much more than everyone else, and I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen again this time. And the more that Saudi Arabia does this, the worse it's going to be for them.
Yeah. Because if you keep cutting, and then that's why it won't happen. But if you look at the news from the Permian, you saw Alpine Apache's abandoned Alpine High, which is 5 rigs coming off. Not sure what they're going to do with them. You're hearing reports of companies saying to vendors, "Hey, $45 oil, we got to tighten the belt, cut back a little bit while the prices are low." Have the larger OPEC nations at least repaired themselves enough from the last downturn to stick it to the show producers? Because it's hard to know how bad a shape the show producers are in, but the headlines would have you think that they could break at any moment. And if OPEC thought that was the case, it doesn't behoove them to put the prices back up if in 9 months all of a sudden the prices are back up and you put a lot of the show producers really on the rails. The only thing I would say is maybe they're fearful that if they do that, they would wipe out the smaller players, and then what you'd have left would be like the big boys, and the big boys aren't really going to. It'd be harder to mess with them. I don't know, but just curious on your
Yeah,
thoughts on that.
it's a good question, and I don't think that they pay as close attention to really what's going on in Texas. I don't think that that OPEC and that I don't think that they're paying quite as close attention to the kind of headlines in Texas that you're looking at. I think that they do gather data and opinions on what's going on there, but I don't think that it's quite the level and the detail that that we know, and especially that you guys are looking at. So, I think that it's more of like a wider approach,
Sure.
and maybe that's not the most valuable approach for them, honestly, because it might be better to have a sense of how individual companies are really doing. I think that essentially they're probably taking the approach of like, look, we can't control it. We can't control the shale. We can't, you know, ones that fail are going to fail, and it's just it's a behemoth that they just can't.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can't manage it, and it's worthless for them to try to manage it. The best thing they can do is try to manage themselves. The issue is that in this market with this kind of this many different producers, they can't. I don't think they can increase prices. I don't think they're like, we're cutting 1 million barrels a day. I don't think that that's going to do much to raise the oil price.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. I guess if I was the Saudis and I said, okay, listen, we can sustain, and I don't know what they can or can't. Let's make this up. We can sustain between 35 and 45 for 18 months. I'm not saying if I wasn't them, if you knew you could do that I wouldn't push the gas pedal to reclaim a lot of market share to put the shale producers in a bad spot, because the shale producers aren't necessarily helping out OPEC on their side either. And so this isn't a I'm for one or against the other. It's just simply saying from a business standpoint, you might would go, huh? Okay, well we can get.
Yeah, and I also think that OPEC is really of the mindset that like shale production is gonna like fall off a cliff in the second half of the year, and I don't think that that's. I think that I think that they strongly think that there's going to be a drop off a lot sooner than there actually is.
Well, that's the other thing that I think is interesting is, we were looking at, just kind of, um, depends on what you think about the ducks, but the production has to slow off in the Permian at some point, you anticipate, and then unless you have the coronavirus, you kind of anticipate the price would kind of go back up, and by the end of the year, late this year, at some point, just the supply and demand metrics would kind of catch back up with things. Um, you know, I wonder if this will actually, I don't want to say speed it up, but if this will change those dynamics when the coronavirus scare is done in, a few months or whatever that is. If you do have some shale producers who do bring off significant amount of barrels offline, there's not as many ducks they think. You get to Q4 or early 2021, you might be sitting around going, oh wow, oil's sitting here at $80 a barrel or whatever, because the reaction that happened during this time period as well, which is why I keep saying we should reevaluate how we analyze the market, but no one would listen to me. OPEC, put me in the WhatsApp group. I need to talk to you fellas. Let's get in there. Okay.
Well, now that CERAWeek's canceled, I guess they're not going to be having their annual like OPEC shale leaders dinner where the only thing we know is what they ate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really, really important stuff that's going to be discussed there. Really, really going to be important. So, let's see here, Ellen. Let's go to. Do you want to do the CNBC piece next?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
OPEC will go beyond what the market has currently priced in, strategist says. OPEC could deliver a 1.2 million barrel a day production cut at its meeting later this week, a.k.a. never let Libya come back onto the market.
Yeah, basically. Libya, you're a lost cause.
You're gone. Yeah, you're gone. You're fired.
Wash your hands.
And that's what is the? I haven't looked. What is the latest with Libya? Like, are they still just holding their oil?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. That's actually a really good question, because like at a certain point, like where are they going to put it?
Yeah, I mean, what yeah, they got to do something, and it's like, okay, let's see if I can pull something up real quick. I hadn't looked recently. Libya peace efforts thrown further into chaos as UN envoy quits. Okay, well, United Nations Libya envoy resigns, citing stress. Libya stressed whoever is on the UN envoy. So those are not good headlines. So no. whatever's going on there. Wow. Okay. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically saying we think they're going to cut 1.2 million barrels per day. Like, where did he come up with that? You know what I mean? Like we think OPEC's going to do this. Like, who's confident enough to make that call? Like, I mean, my call is basically like, I don't think they're going to be able to get Russia to agree to more. And so, but like, I don't know. Like, I don't like to make these calls because you don't know. And like, who's going to be like, oh yeah, they're going to cut more just because the data says that they need that? Like, Russia could look at that data and be like, we don't see it. We don't need it for our budget. So why would we do this? Just because that's what it says, just because they have this idea that like, oh, OPEC wants this target, so they have to do this to get to that target, does not mean that's how it's going to go.
Okay, so I'm going to see if I can track this down. Here we go. I saw this on oilprice.com earlier. I didn't read it, but since we're here now, this is from oilprice.com. It reads, OPEC could agree further oil production cuts in a meeting in Vienna this week, even if Russia decides not to join them. An unnamed source in the know told Reuters. The
Oh my
headline
God,
reads
an unnamed
OPEC.
source in the know.
Right, now this is 2.7 million barrels per day, not including Libya output. So 2.7 million barrels a
Libya
day.
output. I'm sorry, I don't think Libya output is included in anything. I think they're
No,
technically exempt from the deal.
yeah, right. I know. I'm
Yeah.
saying just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go to the Reuters piece, this is from March 1st. OPEC could deepen supply cuts with or without Russia, and this goes on. Let's see here. I'm trying to see. Okay, this is the source. There should be a cut. There is no other option. Another source said. Saudi Arabia wants to hold prices from falling, but Russia is still not agreeing. So the only way might be for OPEC to cut alone, which will not send a good signal to the market, one source says. So these are sources that are unnamed, and they're saying 2.7 million barrels. Can you see that happening? 2.7 million barrel per day cut?
Well, but I think he's adding. I think he's adding the current cut that needs to be extended, and then you add that. Then you add 1 million barrels onto that. It's not 2.7 from what we're doing now. It's 2.7 from December.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's what it is. See, this is the way they make everyone confused, because this is the like weird number stuff, and that's why they come with their numbers. And like, what? How much oil are they actually producing? It's like no one really knows because there's so many different. So I think the 2.7 is actually rolling over the current cuts,
yeah.
and
1
then
million,
an additional 1 million.
And that's not, and then you have the Libya, which is 120,000 barrels a day. Poor Libya, who's not getting any of their stuff. The EIA, according to this piece, last month cuts its demand outlook by 378,000 barrels per day, after OPEC cut its by 230,000. So sorry. Anyways, I saw that earlier. I meant to go back to it. So yeah, that'd be the million. So the sources here, I guess when you start looking at all this stuff, these sources are obviously either A, made up, B, people who work for like investment banks and are just, reporting that they actually have something to know. But they could be people in the know, and they're all trying to posture. But this is the kind of posturing that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because, okay, well, you got a thing, and a source in the know told Reuters they may cut 1 million barrels, but I don't think Putin's going, oh, wow, Reuters is reporting this morning. Novak, get in here. We're going to have to rethink everything.
Yeah.
The hype, it's almost like it's like the Tom Brady free agency hype right now. Like, it is at a fever pitch. Now, he might go to Tennessee. That wouldn't surprise me. But he's probably going to end back up in New England. But the hype and all of the speculation around it is insane.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, OPEC, can you beat the Tom Brady free agency hype or not?
Okay, I think we got one more here from Barron's. Oil is still plunging as demand falls. One big buyer is out there. The oil sell-off gained steam on Friday, with West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures plunging more than 6% before recovering slightly. We talked about the prices a lot. You mentioned the China buying thing, which is interesting because I didn't see that that news, because we talked about them. Remember, they cut the refineries, and then the next week they came back and said we're going to buy a bunch of it because it's cheap, and then now you're saying though that they're cutting again. So
yeah, I think there's a lot. I wanted to talk about this because I think that there is a lot of conflicting information out there, and I saw this also. I get the print version of Barron's, so
I'm supposed to, Barron's. Quit sending it to the wrong place, people.
Oh, hey, that has happened to me too. Yeah, I was supposed to get it like a year ago, and like it never came, and then suddenly they started delivering it. So like Barron's, yeah,
get together.
Gotta get your act together. So this is based on so they quote Platts and also RBC. So this is like, according to Platts, says a lack of buyers and cancellation of contracts has prompted many companies to park their crude on very large crude carriers near Singapore. Okay, we've seen that. Then as things get worse, yes, everything could be a catastrophe and the whole world could end. Then it says one buyer has emerged to soak up excess supply, according to RBC Capital Markets, China buying for storage. Quote, preliminary satellite imagery of floating roof tanks indicate that China has increased crude stocks by some 28 million barrels so far this month. Okay, but to me, okay, that doesn't say that they're buying. It says that maybe they're not using, and so they're just the regular stuff is going into storage. So I think that RBC kind of jumped the gun on this, and that China's not is not necessarily buying more. So yeah, that's my reading. I don't think we know for sure. I think that yeah. Can I also say something? So in this article, I'm looking at it now. I get an ad. That the ad I get is for a face mask, N95 filter, 95%. Okay. But you can also get it says it's less than the N99 filter, 99% limited stock by now.
Limited stock by now. You better buy it.
Yeah.
They are in high demand.
I will not be I will not be clicking on this ad, just as listeners know. But I don't know. This really bothers me because to say that that China is buying because of preliminary satellite data showing that the floating movers are going up, I think there are other explanations for that are not that China is buying excess supply. And I think that we'll know when we get their numbers. Or when we hear things like they're ordering 30% less oil.
Speaking of buying, question for you. Speakner, the listener sent this to me the other day, and I didn't catch this. You probably caught it and talked about it, but I didn't. This is from February 10th on Platts. U.S. President Donald Trump proposed a $4.8 trillion budget, includes a proposal to sell 15 million barrels for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and to sell off 1 million Northeast gasoline supply reserve.
I heard the SPR one, and that's just because that kind of legislation went through Congress a while ago, and yeah, it sucks that they're selling it now, but when you have to legislate the sale of oil, it kind of goes really slowly.
But so, who's buying it?
Well, yeah, that's the question. But if it's like super discounted, then like usually they sell it to U.S. refineries.
Yeah. No, I know. It's just funny to talk about who's buying oil.
It's not going to be delivered for a while. It's like not going to be delivered till October.
I know.
It's like oil for delivery in October. But yeah, it sounds so horrible. It's like, oh my God, is our government really that dumb?
Yeah.
They're going to like want to sell this oil now when oil is like at its lowest. Like, come on, guys. But it's just like, this is why we shouldn't have to legislate the sale of oil from the SPR, because it takes so long and you get bad timing.
Well, and if oil is relatively cheap right now. I know Art Berman would disagree with that statement, but oil is cheap right now. Why don't we build more and hold it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
we could.
I don't know.
But they want to sell it because they need to make money off of it, which they're not going to make very much, but
Whatever. They're going to do something with it. So.
Yet another dumb decision by our politicians. We didn't talk about the latest news in the race, by the way.
That's where I was going next.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's recap here. Let's go back to Iowa. I called for a Bernie win, and I don't even know what happened with Iowa. I think Buttigieg won, kind of, sort of, maybe. Yeah, him and Bernie were close. I predicted a Bernie win in New Hampshire. I was right there. And I predicted Bernie would not get the nomination. And based upon all the candidates dropping out today for it to be like him and Biden for Super Tuesday, it feels like the Democrats are doing their part to ensure that Bernie doesn't win. Klobuchar, I saw, finally dropped out. God. Oh, she was.
Is it Klobuchar or Klobuchar? I never really figured out what it was.
She wasn't relevant enough for me to pay attention, so I don't know.
All right.
But did you see the guy from the billionaire guy, Tom? Did you see him dancing with Juvenile?
No.
Oh Ellen Wald. Ellen Wald, where have you been? Oh, hold on. I got to send this to you. We got to get a live we got to get a live Twitter live reaction here. Oh my gracious.
Wait, Tom Steyer dropped out, right?
Yes, this was before he dropped out. He should have just let's see here. Let's see if this is it. I think I've got it. So you know Juvenile is, right? The rapper, by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so his
Oh, here we go. I want to look at this. Okay, all right. Oh no, this is a pronunciation guide you sent me, so I stopped messing up her name.
Nathan.
You send,
Nathan.
Send me
come
this.
On, Nathan. I'm trying to find it.
I want to see this video.
This is the greatest. So
I'm going to admit to the listeners that I watched all of Pete Buttigieg's however we pronounce his name, concession speech last night, just because I wanted to hear who he was endorsing, and he did not deliver. And I want those
Here it
40
is.
minutes back.
You want those 40 minutes back? Okay, here it is. When you get off, please go to Twitter and find the actual music.
Oh God, this could
Play
be.
it for listeners. Let's see if we can get the music here.
That perhaps will make you smile for sure. This viral moment of yours.
That's
You got a little loose. You're dancing. You're on stage there with rapper Juvenile. One of his hit songs. What was that moment like? What was moving you? What were you thinking?
Well, Frederick, it's really funny to me because we are talking about really serious things here. I mean, we are talking about people who are working for inadequate wages and can't live on it, people who are dying.
Is it not showing him dance?
Okay, I don't want to hear about the dying people.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of hip action going on, but not a lot of feet action. And I feel bad critiquing someone's dancing because I'm like the world's worst dancer.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of. It's just the fact that he's running for president and he's like, hey, I need to win this primary to stay in the race. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out there and dance like a buffoon, and people are going to vote for me.
Yeah.
That's the key there. And so,
Oh God, it's like
it's so funny.
So now
And
everyone's dropping out. I'm upset because Buttigieg never told us who he's endorsing, and I really wanted to know. I was actually wondering if he was going to pull like if he was going to suddenly like pull a 180 and endorse Bernie, because that would have been exciting. Would that have not been a really good twist?
Did you? Yeah. Well, it wouldn't surprise me. Did you see any MSNBC coverage this weekend?
Possibly. I was like flipping all the channels.
Okay. So MSNBC
I think I was mostly watching CNN though.
Yeah. So when Nevada was going down, they came on and were talking about, oh my gosh, Bernie's the worst. How can we let Bernie win? Da da da. This week on MSNBC, they're like, maybe Biden and Bernie should join forces and go together. It's like, what? For the last 2 weeks, you've been telling me how terrible this guy is.
Well, you know that now Trump is the youngest man in the race.
Oh my gracious.
So like Bernie and Biden, like I think you need like these guys have to pick a young running mate as like insurance policy.
Wow,
you can't have like Bernie and Biden together because like, hey, if coronavirus hits the White House, they could both be taken out.
Gone. Hey, can you play our clip,
and
Nate?
And then who do we get?
Who do we get, Nate? Who do we get? Play it, please. Come on, Nate. Play it.
This one?
Nancy Pelosi. Don't we get the Speaker of the House?
No. Can you hear this?
I'll have to send it.
No.
Oh, she can't hear through the thing? Oh, never mind.
Sorry.
So I had Nate cut up the clip of Biden going, "You're a lying dog face pony soldier," or whatever. So we're going to have that just in the podcast at random from now on. So.
That sounds awesome. So yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, 100 million Nancy.
I think doesn't the Speaker of the House become the? I'm gonna admit it's been a long time.
If they both died, yeah. If they both died, yeah.
This has been a while, but I'm pretty sure that the Speaker of the House becomes president.
Well,
so,
I tell you what.
Yeah, I think we should all pay a lot more attention to like who these running mates are because.
Who's your prediction?
Hey, coronavirus is taking out the Iranian leadership. They're like falling like flies. Like there've been a bunch of them have gotten sick, and someone in the Expediency Council died. So
do you have a Super Tuesday prediction?
Super Tuesday. Oh my God, I can't. I'm not. I think Biden is going to do well in the South, and Bernie's going to do well in the not South. And
the not South.
In the not South.
I like that. That's a historian take there. I like that.
And I think it could be close between Warren and Bernie in Massachusetts, which I used to live in Massachusetts and find that most fascinating because Warren is the senator from Massachusetts, right, and Bernie is next door, and I think it'll be interesting to see if Warren can can come out on top in Massachusetts. That would be huge for her. If she doesn't, then but yeah, I think Biden will do well in the Southern.
So there's only 3 left right now, right? It's Biden, Sanders, and Warren, right?
And Bloomberg.
Oh, God, Bloomberg. You're spending all that money. I can't even remember you, man.
I know. Well, he wasn't on the ballot in any of the states, but I think he's on Super Tuesday ballots. So.
Yeah, that's his big deal. I forgot. Mr. Irrelevant. Talk about it. Like, is that? Yeah. Oh man, I forget about that guy. Yeah,
He's forgettable, which is probably not what he wants to hear.
not with, but if you want to sponsor the podcast, let us know. We'll be happy to take your money. Okay, so yeah, Bloomberg will pick up. See, Bloomberg, I think. God, if you're gonna vote for Biden, you might as well vote for Bloomberg. Like, why would you vote for a horse-faced pony guy if you can vote for yeah, lion, dog-faced pony soldier if you get that? So I don't, I don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to say Super Tuesday prediction. I'm going to go out. I do not believe this for a second, but I'm going to go out and say Elizabeth Warren has a big night because no one's saying it. I don't believe it, but you know what? Let me roll the dice. Let me roll the dice.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren has a strong night. That doesn't necessarily mean she wins, but she could have a strong showing. Remember, I think California is still winner take all, but most of the rest of them are still like percentages. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Very much regionalized. So I would say Elizabeth Warren has a big night, just long enough to keep her in it because at this point, I would love to see her and Donald Trump debate. I just think of the comedy that's left to me. Joe Biden wouldn't even be fun because he can't speak hardly. Yeah, that wouldn't even be fun. But Elizabeth is kind of gritty, so I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Way back before she was like a national figure, back when I lived in Massachusetts, so the most interesting thing was, I watched a debate between Scott Brown and Martha Coakley, and that's when Scott Brown beat Martha Coakley to become like the first, Republican senator for Massachusetts in forever. And then he had to run again against Elizabeth Warren, and he lost. But oh my God, that debate was, I think I was actually living in Georgia and somehow like went to watch it online because it was so horrendous. Like they were both the absolute worst debaters ever. And she hasn't really changed that much.
No, but she's feisty.
Character.
She's feisty.
Character, but she really does she brings a lot of entertainment to the debate stage.
She does.
They all do, but she does a lot.
Yeah, So I think
we would miss her.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna miss any of them, but yes, I know what you mean. We would miss the. I'm still bummed out. I can't vote in the Democratic primary, but who's the lady, Marianne Williamson?
Marianne.
Yeah, that was my candidate. That's
she was
my
clearly
candidate.
very forgettable.
But she was hilarious when she was on.
She was hilarious. She was, and also like Andrew Yang, but math.
Yeah, and he tried to bribe people and it still didn't work. Like, how disappointing. I'm going to give you $12,000 a year if you vote for me. And he couldn't get it done. So, Andrew, come back in 2024 and double that and we'll go from there. So, Ellen, where will you be this week?
I am going to be in Washington, D.C. I'm speaking on a panel at the Cato Institute about energy security and American foreign policy and national security and Iran and all that. It's going to be awesome. I will put the link in the show notes. You can still register to go if you're in D.C. or you can watch the live stream. I may also be on Bloomberg TV the same day talking about OPEC, so we'll see about that. And I think that's busy enough.
There you go. That's super busy. All right. Well, Textile Guest Podcast is where I will be, and we will be back here next week, right, Ellen? Yeah, we're back next week.
Sounds good.
We will talk to you. We will have all the latest OPEC coverage because that'll be done by then, right?
And maybe by the time we're here next, maybe somebody else will have joined the race and restored the entertainment value.
God, if Hillary Clinton would come back in, I would.
I
would give something for that. I would donate. Donate right now.
I'm not gonna. Wow, that's depressing. I'm not gonna there's this one show, news show. I'm not gonna say what channel it's on. That basically I like to watch the last 5 minutes of it every Friday because they have something called Candidate Casino, where whoever the guest that week basically have $100 in chips to put on whatever candidate they think is gonna win, and they did it in the Republican campaign, which was hilarious, and they're doing it again this year. And if I was on Candidate Casino, I would put a decent amount of money on Hillary Clinton right now
to come back.
Yeah,
to come back.
I do not think she is out of this. So Anyway,
if you
we
watch
clearly
House,
spend way
if-
too much
yes,
time entertaining
it's-
ourselves with
sorry,
politics.
Sorry, go watch House of Cards. You'll know how that
Yeah.
all plays out. That's all I'll say.
yeah.
Ellen, it was good to be back. Listeners, thank you as always. And